Hello, and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering church around the world. In 2011, when South Sudan finally achieved independence from the North, it was a symbol of African progress, similar to, for example, the end of apartheid in South Africa. In 2013, however, the violence returned. Pitted against each other were two of South Sudan's most populous ethnic groups, the Nuer and the Dinka. The violence continues today in what is a brutal civil war. To tell us more about the situation in South Sudan today, the violence, and also his efforts to bring peace in his way, it is my great privilege to welcome His Excellency Bishop Paride Taban, the Bishop Emeritus of the Torit Diocese in South Sudan. Welcome, Your Excellency, and thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you, Mark.
Your Excellency, South Sudan, a country where there were so many hopes for peace, a new country of independence, full of joy, now again caught in a violent civil war. Can you tell us what is a little bit the situation today?
The situation today is we need prayer and we need God's intervention, because it's not enough for human being. So we are asking everybody to pray and to ask for God's intervention, that all those who are caught up in this conflict may listen to the voice of those who are suffering, the cry of the innocent people.
Many would say that this is a war between the Dinka and the Nuer, the most populous tribes in South Sudan. Is this the case?
I think that's always a mistake that people do. This war is not Dinka or Nuer. The Dinka and Nuer are cited because they are big number and they are political leaders. Otherwise, even most of the Dinkas and the Nuer are disappointed of this war. And their children, their wives are dying. So it is really the political issue. Otherwise, it's not really Dinka and Nuer.
What touches you most when you go back to South Sudan and you see this violence? Does it not break your heart to see again the country cast in this shadow?
I think these people are all like my sons, my brothers, and my most beloved people. It is like the friendship that Jesus has with Lazarus. When Lazarus died, Jesus wept. And this is the same thing that's happening. When you see innocent people die, you become powerless, you begin to weep. But still, we believe that Lazarus was risen by Jesus from the dead. We know this will come to an end.
You are working towards exactly the resurrection of your country. You have started a peace farm in an area called Kuron. And you started this farm back in 2005 as a demonstration farm, as a symbol. What was your idea of starting this farm back in 2005?
This country, these people, I had my experience. People always speak against one another. My idea was to get rid of tribalism. And as Jesus said, may they be one, to see that these people live as brothers and sisters. I had this, as you know, from my childhood. I grew in a sawmill which was founded during the colonial time by the British. They brought families from all over the Sudan. Luckily, my parents were among those, and I grew in this village. I knew no tribalism. we love each other. And when I left this area, went for my education outside Katire, this town, I myself was called by my own people, even a foreigner. So, and I saw that also the Khartoum regime used this to have this war of over 20, 30 years, pitching people against each other through tribalism. I say, wow. As soon as peace comes, I will resign. I will retire and found a peace village, a small oasis of peace, where people can see some light. And I saw one in Jerusalem, in Israel, Nova Salam. So that's why I founded this. In isolated area, and the area I found, the peace village, was not even developed by the colonial time.
And you set it up in an area called Kuron. Why this particular area? You say it was very isolated. Why did you choose this particular area?
That was not a place for living. It was a grazing area where community from different area come graze.
But cattle grazing.
Cattle grazing. And then, but in that area, when they go back they come there during the dry season when there is no grass in other area. And when they are leaving, returning to their place, there is still cattle raiding and so on.
So there's cattle rustling going on, the stealing of cattle.
Stealing cattle and killing. So I say, wow, maybe to make this place where people should live as brothers and sisters, since they are coming to meet from different groups. And there was the river called Kuron. During rain season, very difficult to raid.
Because the cattle raiders couldn't cross the river.
Cross. But when we put a bridge, because we made a road going to Boma, to Upper Nile region, that was under my care during the war, because the Bishop of Malakal could not reach there. And people then began crossing even during rain season.
To raid.
And they called themselves enemies. I say, wow, this is where we should start. And people here were living milk and blood and meat. They don't have much on agriculture, so we started with a small demonstration farm, something to have an alternative to meat and blood and milk.
In South Sudan today, there are about 600 different tribal groups speaking about 400 different languages. How do you unite so many different tribal groups in, for example, a peace village like Kuron?
We thank the Comboni missionaries. And when they came, they managed to start the church work among these people. And in some area, they reduced the number of the languages, because some were really like dialects. They reduced. Like in my own diocese, there are more than 20 different languages. But these were reduced to about 5 different languages. And because their neighbors could speak the 2 languages, so they reduced them. And that helped in many parts of South Sudan. And these thanks go to the first Comboni missionaries who came to South Sudan and in Sudan.
And in your particular village now, the Kuron village, how do you pledge, or how do the people, what commitment, let's say, do the people make to live together in peace? How does it work?
You know, when they look at me and they accepted me, and they accepted all the church people, or people who come to teach in school, in a clinic and so on, they become so happy. The presence among them is already a language. As I say, once the governor came in the area, the first time in the history, and they look at the governor and say, who are you? What are you coming to do here? Say, I'm the governor of the area. Say, what is the work of the governor? Say, you don't know the work of the governor? And do you know the work of these people who are here? And do you know this man who is here? Say, yes, we know. This is our God. Without him, we would not be here. Without this man, we didn't know that we were human beings. But he made us to be human beings. So, I don't know the language, but my heart, my smile, and my service make them to know me that this is, even God, we don't know the language of God, but we know his love, you know. So they said, this is our God. I said, no, I'm not your God. I'm here because of you. If you are not here, I would not be here.
And you're only bringing the love of God to these people.
The love of God to you. I'm not your God. So that is what they understand. What they understand is love. This is what I told it. Even a child knows my language. What language do I speak to a child? My smile. You see, that's what I do. And this is what the people want. If you go there, they love you because you have come to them. And they say, this is one of us.
How many are you now in the village, in this peace village?
Actually, the families are over 100 who live really as a community, but we are surrounded by over 3,000 villages who came. It has not become now a grazing area. It has become another country. And also, there are people in those areas who live up to the border of Ethiopia, have no services, no school, no hospital. The only clinic is medical services in the peace village. The only school is in the peace village. And now people around the village, even they brought some services like small shops. The people didn't know what was shop. They didn't know many things. Now they know. We had an airport, an airstrip, and the first time they saw a plane running down, they said, we thought this was always a bird passing. They never knew. So, and also we managed to get girls in school before. They didn't like any girl to go to school.
Only the boys were allowed to go?
Only the bad boys, because the good boys had to go look after the cattle. The boys who are not able to be controlled by their parents, those are bad, sent to school.
Made it quite a challenge for you.
But then now it became a challenge because we had trauma healing, we have the healing, we have the drama, theater. Now we go to play the theater in the villages. Now girls are coming to school.
Is the idea of the peace village expanding in South Sudan? How is this? What is your vision for the village and for the future of South Sudan with this idea?
To have a vision, you need the support of the international community. Up to now, I have maybe 2 or 3 friends who are supporting me. It is very difficult to have a big dream where you have no financial support. We have not even a church. We are praying under the tree, or sometime when there is rain, we made one big classroom, we pray there. And so it's not easy. Even children are coming from poor families, they need feeding. We cannot feed them. World Food Program give us some food, but giving only sorghum and maybe some few beans and oil, that's not enough for the health of children. So to have the dream going big, you need a lot of support from international. And because of this war, many people are withdrawing away from South Sudan.
So it's difficult to attract them to support.
It's very difficult to support. And we told that if you don't support these people, you are making them to become poor, and hostility, the war will continue. Because Pope Paul VI say development is peace. And that's what we look forward in.
And yet, at the same time, the idea that you've started is being slowly replicated in other villages.
Now other villages are, but now in the villages around us many people from all over South Sudan, different states say, why do you do it only there? Why don't you bring to different places? Say, you send somebody to come and learn and carry it, but I can't do that. Look at my age. I'm now 78 years old. And what we look forward is that the Peace Village has been recognized because last year, 1 year now, I've been reconciling a government with a small faction, rebellion group. Rebel faction. Now we brought peace in that area and the place became a small state. And that's a good thing that the Peace Village, and now they're asking me to go on to many other places, even to come to this peace which now they are having in Addis Ababa. I told them that my peace is from grassroots. I don't climb the tree from the top. This war is more on power, on leadership. What I want is to go to the grassroots, to the dying people, and from there I climb up. That is what my plan always. And still, many people are asking me, including many embassies, many NGO, European Union, why don't you join this? I say, if I go on, I have to go and talk to the fighting group on the ground, to the soldiers, to the commanders, to the child soldiers, to people who are dying on the ground, but not to go to Addis.
In fact, there could be a risk of the work that you have started being politicized. How do you prevent that from happening? How do you keep this really, as you say, a grassroots effort, inspired by God and through your hands, that it is not politicized?
It's difficult to be politicized because during the 20 years of war, because of the service that my diocese were doing, because my diocese was the only in the war area and was serving people all over, even to other dioceses, even prisoners from the north. There were a lot of prejudices from the high command that I was preparing myself to overthrow John Garang.
They thought you were preparing for political leadership.
Political leadership to overthrow John Garang. And one of the members of the high command, a good Catholic, came to me and said, "Bishop, do you want to go to prison again?" I said, "Why?" Say, "You are being suspected." I said, "You go and tell your members of high command in the meeting that when I became a bishop or even a priest, I vomited all the power, political power of this world. And tell them that Bishop has not become mad to eat his vomit. All the chairs or the president of political leaders in the world I vomited out. Unless I become mad or I'm like a dog, I can eat, but I'm not yet mad. So tell them that I'm nothing. I'm now the bishop of the whole world. I cannot reduce myself to be a president of South Sudan." From that time, no suspicion about me. Everybody don't like to talk about that.
That was the end of that conversation.
That was the end. And they saw also, I retired from my being a bishop, the ordinary of the diocese, 8 years before my age of retirement. That shocked them. So that is the end of talking about me on political issue.
South Sudan has a lot of challenges. I look at a couple of statistics here. 9 out of 10 live below the poverty line, and infant mortality rates are about 30 to 40%. How do you cope also spiritually in seeing this suffering of the children and of the people of South Sudan? Maybe ask, where do you get your strength from to overcome so that you don't despair when you see all of this suffering?
Well, many times I say that I get my strength from God. But in reality, I get my strength from those people who are dying. When you see some of them dying, yet still able to smile, that's a great strength for me. You see the mothers whose children are dying, and when you visit them, and once people were dying in Torit, we were burying people with broid machine in massive grave. When I came with that deadly convoy, and I saw the people, I stopped the vehicle and I began weeping. They came to console me. "If you weep, all of us will die. Don't cry. We are strong because of you, but if you now weep, we become desperate." And this is where my strength lies.
But it's a terrible burden. It's a burden in the sense that they weep they ask you not to weep so that they can look to you for your strength. So I'm just thinking it must be at the same time a terrible burden that you cannot weep.
And I get the strength also. Jesus was dying on the cross. The mother was there. And he said, "Mother, there is your son." And talk to John. "Son, there is your mother." And he said, "Father, forgive. They don't know what they do." This is the strength. And John was presenting us who were crucifying Jesus. And the mother, he gave those who are crucifying him to be the son of the mother. This is also one of my strengths, as I was even in the prison of the SPLA. This had been my strength. "Mother, here is your son. Son, here is your mother. Forgive, they don't know what they do." And I know this also from my own mother. When I was young, sometimes I suck. When I am already satisfied, I beat the breast with my teeth. And my mother would just smile and never do anything. And when people do me something, I look at what if my mother had thrown me away because I do that. I was the one who buried my mother. She died in my hand. I realized in whose hand would she die. So these have been some of the things I looked at. So I look at Jesus, I look even my parents who brought me up in this way. Yet they were not Christian by then. Because love of mother is in their heart, put by God directly, even before the baptism.
Your parents, did they become Christian? When did they become Christian?
They became Christian before my ordination to the priesthood in order to get Holy Eucharist from my hand.
And your parents, were they also there to see your ordination to become a bishop?
My mother, by my father, died a year before.
Your Excellency, the Church, as we've been speaking about, has a broad reach and is one of the very few institutions in the country, if perhaps the only institution in the country, that is not ethnically bound. What role and what responsibility does this mean for the Church in its role in reuniting and seeking reconciliation for the whole country?
The Church is not only in the South Sudan. We are a universal church. Through our own unity all over as Catholic and universal, there lies our strength. Without the universal church, we would not even have brought a stop war in 1962, from 62 to 72. And we would not have brought the war from 1983 to 2005. It is because the church was united. Even in the South Sudan or in Sudan, it is an example that ecumenically we are the strongest church in the world, that the Catholic Church is a member of the Council of Churches and is the co-founder of the Council of Churches in South Sudan. And I've been the co-founder of the New Sudan Council of Churches. In that, we become very strong. United, we stand. Divided, we fall.
So in a certain way, you're calling on all the Catholics in the Universal Church. They too have a role to play in what's happening today in South Sudan.
Sure, it is not only, they should renew what they have been, and they should not be desperate of any small thing. That they have to know that it is the role of the church. Without the church all over the universal church, we would not be so strong. And I think they have to learn also from us that we have been shepherds of the people. We never let the people, as Christ said, ready to die with our sheep. And this has been the role the church has been playing. So that's my appeal also to the church today.
So I want to understand, the role of the church in South Sudan has been to be with its sheep until its martyrdom, until the very end.
Till the end.
And the role of the universal church is to do what?
To be with us. Because
in prayer,
in solidarity, not only, but also in sharing the little that they have materially.
How can we help? You mentioned earlier that you have a desire to see a church built in the village. What can we do to help the people of South Sudan?
It's very difficult to say. Jesus was say, asked by his own disciple. He was asked before they joined him, Lord, where do you live? He said, come and see. When they came and saw Jesus, they remained with him. Come and see. Visit us. And when you visit, you will see the need. We ask our churches not to abandon us. Money alone cannot solve our problem, but we need your presence also to come and weep with us and smile with us. That is what we need. Come and see, and you will see the need.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you for opening not a window, but a door for South Sudan.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of Catholics in South Sudan, or perhaps how you might be able to help, please look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.